All right, good evening. First off, we need to approve the minutes from April 8th.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from April 8th.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye, Ron.
Aye.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Bill. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, Bill R.
Thank you. First up. Boardwoods, you have
We
anybody?
got an updated plan from them
Dave Bradford.
with the comment that David had gone over it and had approved it. So
David, can you hear us? David? He's there somewhere.
there he is.
Yes, GZA sent me the updated delineation site plan yesterday. I reviewed it last night and got back to them and said it looked good based on what we had discussed in the field. I guess it was 3 or 4 weeks ago now.
Okay, so you were okay with their revisions?
Yes.
Okay.
We're gonna approve this.
So we just, if David has approved it, then we can either something or decide that we
So
just go ahead.
yeah, no, I'm fine with approving it, but just so I'm clear, when they'll still submit an NOI for the actual.
Yes,
Right.
just
It's
a
just
resource
for the-
delineation, there's no permission to do anything,
No work.
Okay,
put anything in there or anything like that.
okay.
Do we need to vote on anything then?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
We need to vote.
So we're just approving,
We're approving the revised plans as submitted.
So move.
I'll second.
I, Ron.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Sally.
Hi, Bill L. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, Chuck.
Hi, Bill R.
Okay.
Let me explain why we have to do that. Because we have 2 of our members on Zoom. We have to identify who's who. And while we're there and you can identify us, you can't really identify them. We can, but. RDA for the,
So when you take a vote on Zoom, you have to poll everybody.
Town Beach, Katie. Finalize what you want?
I did, and then I printed out copies of the RDA. Oh, you have one. I have an extra one then. And then
I
I
don't
printed
have
out
that one. I don't
just a
have yours.
few. If everybody wants, oh, there they go.
This is somebody else.
Sorry. I printed out a few of these if people want to share, or I can print out one for everybody. But it's the same proposal as last time, but since we've met, the Parks and Rec voted on to keep the kayak racks where they are because we can move the tree in the bowl. So that's a clear, safe entrance to the water. And because it's a nice flat area, we don't have to install a dock. And it's all over to the side, so you know that you enter right in front of the racks. And then the other things I added was putting in that we would mow for the first 3 years. And then in the fall, tarp it down to help suffocate the roots of the Phragmites. And then I put in here to walk with, I have 2 nurseries that are gonna walk with me to pick out the correct plantings for the erosion control.
Do we have a list of those, what they're gonna do, or?
No, but I have a list of what I found online that's recommended. But when, after I meet with them, I could give a list of what, or do I just go ahead and plant I probably have to get permission of what species.
You would want native.
Okay,
Yeah,
Yeah, it's required to be native.
oh, absolutely.
sometimes you have to see what's available before you can.
Yeah,
List, and once you get the availability and
and then.
nail it down, then.
Okay, perfect.
Motion,
Make the motion to approve the RDA for the town of Stockbridge Town Beach and the proposed plan.
Second,
Second.
hi Sally.
I run.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Bill L. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, Chuck.
Hi, Bill R.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work on it. It'd be nice.
Appreciate it.
Notice of intent. Nielsen Lane, demolition reconstruction of a single-family house sewer connection.
We're gonna continue that. We're still working on the redesign of the house and
Great.
configuring it a little differently and changed up some of the stormwater stuff, so. Yeah, if we could just push that to the next meeting.
Next meeting, okay.
And the Scenic Mountain Act,
Yeah, because you've got
Same thing.
Scenic Mountain
Yes.
Act as well. Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, let's, since you're 21 Beechwood Drive. Judith Roberts, RDA. Drainage, oh, that's one of those, I know what that
I
is.
think I met a bunch of you, you came out to do it.
Yeah,
You did.
Did.
Nice to see you.
I brought you a picture if you wanted to remind yourself of my private.
Yeah, we remember.
You might not have seen it at its finest.
I'd like to see it. Is this year?
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
As bad as the
Actually, it's every year.
before.
I know it's every,
But it's getting worse.
yeah.
times,
So that's fun.
we've done it.
Hello, my name's Aaron. I'm representing Judith Roberts at 21 Beechwood Drive. So these water puddles were taken at the time of the survey, which was done like back in this past August, and there was still a lot of water
Yeah.
ponding on our property and in the neighbors. So we're proposing a series of culverts underneath the driveways into a 3-foot wide swale down into the intermittent stream that crosses Beechwood Drive.
And the adjacent property owners are all,
We
They're all
got,
okay with it.
we got copies of emails from the adjacent owners saying that they were fine with it.
I mean, pending that they see the final drawings and,
Right.
you know, any modifications.
So I had a question, and David, I don't know if you can chime in or remember this property. I think when we were out there, we questioned if it was isolated land subject to flooding, given the vegetation and how, it's been wet for so long that
Well, it does
it's not
dry
just,
up, but, and there'll be long stretches where it's dry, but then, there'll be a heavy rain or something and it fills. And it doesn't come from drainage from other areas. It just, it has no place to go
right,
once there's, snow melt off or, whatnot. Heavy rains.
right.
But like if it's a wet season, it'll linger there for a long time.
Yeah,
And I've taken down 8 trees. 3 of them have fallen on my house.
Yeah.
Because they sit, as you can see in the picture, they sit in a lake. And there's no way they're gonna survive.
right.
And then there's mosquitoes.
Yeah, no, I'm questioning if it needs to be a notice of intent, whether it's a wetland. I
I
know,
didn't think they.
I'm not saying it does. It's a question because, there was skunk cabbage there. There was, it was really wet.
I walked it up and down today. I don't think I saw it today.
well, there was some there last time we were there, so,
Skunk cabbage is up for sure.
yeah.
Is this the property that had the drainage problem?
Yes.
Okay.
It's two properties, 2 driveways, a
3.
little stream, 3 driveways?
Yep.
Yeah, mine being one of them.
All right,
And the property is separated from Stockbridge Bowl from the gravel road, correct?
yes.
Yes,
Okay, yeah, it's been a year, at least a year since I was out there.
Yeah, it just, everything, nothing goes
There's
quickly.
a stream in between the two parcels too,
Right.
correct?
No,
Uh,
the stream's at the end of the third parcel.
Right,
Oh,
It's my house and then two beyond it, and then the very low stream,
Crosses 3 driveways to reach the stream.
mine being one of them. Because I'm hooking up both sides of the driveway. Under the driveway. So,
Yeah, without
houses
looking
beyond.
at some plans, it's hard for me to comment with in a beneficial way. I haven't seen the notice of intent, so I'm reluctant to say much.
yeah. But I understand that. It's submitted as an RDA, and that's my,
RDA, right?
yeah, my question is whether it should be a NOI. I don't know. What do you think, Sally?
You could almost make the case that it's maintenance, it hasn't been done, and that what the request is just to do the maintenance to clean out that swale. I don't think,
It isn't,
I mean, I'm not advocating
There
this.
really isn't a swale
The,
that
the,
that's
sw-
not
yeah, the
very
swale would be
defined.
proposed, which would, actually connect the area to a wetland. So kind of right now, it could almost be an isolated wetland itself, which isn't subject. But we would just be proposing relocating the water
And one
that
of our,
ponds there.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
one of my neighbors put in a foundation and a sump pump.
Yeah.
So that water now pools,
To you? also?
no, it doesn't, but it pools down, like I was there today and I don't know if it shows up on my camera. You know, because the lighting wasn't very good, but there's a whole wet area by the third driveway,
Yeah,
you know, that it's,
are there any trees that need to be taken down from the? So it's pretty much a straight shot
Yes.
from the side of your driveway was where the pipe would start out.
Yep, a little bit set off back off the road and then underneath the neighbors, kind of right at the corner. The swale will run alongside the road, outside of the tree line.
Yeah.
Come under the third driveway and into the intermittent.
there are no trees down there at all. The only one that was.
Would this be a steady flow of water or just?
Probably
A
just
rain
a
event.
seasonal, yeah, or a rain event.
What size are you making the culverts?
Do 6-inch pipes.
Yeah. Yeah, 6-inch.
6 inch?
I'm just thinking, will there be any erosion at the outlet? Will that add?
Yeah, you could do some.
I mean,
Wrap it.
yeah, we are proposing a riprap stone
Okay,
swale.
all right. I'm okay with it.
and how close is it to the stream?
I believe this was about 127 feet. From her driveway over,
where is the end of the swale with regard to the stream?
the swale would end at 17 Beechwood,
Yeah,
go underneath the culvert. Then that culvert would empty out into the stream.
The water level in the stream is quite low.
It rains.
Yeah, and it's, I
Even
mean,
then, it's not
yeah, it stays low.
huge opening and it
Yeah.
usually stays relatively low.
Supposedly the culverts are supposed to be size to the size of the flow. If there's a whole
I think
measurement
the
and-
flow will be relatively low. It's not like the water drains and drains and drains, just kind of pools there. Stays there for a long.
We looked into a bigger size culvert. That would include a lot more regrading of the driveways.
yeah, yeah. Otherwise, it would be like a catch basin in one of the driveways. It'd be
Yeah,
one great mosquitoes.
yeah.
Any other questions, comments?
I think this is a practical solution
Yeah,
to a real problem.
Yeah, I agree.
there may be some maintenance which you will have to take care of. Make sure the culvert stays clean and open, the leaves in the fall, that kind of thing.
So
Happy to,
I would just want to make sure we see it and make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. I mean, I'm just
oh, you
concerned
mean
because,
once it's done?
yeah, when it's done,
Okay.
because the
Yeah, I
whole
don't have a
site
problem.
was so wet.
Yeah, we are proposing some silt fencing and whatnot along the neighbor's property. So before that gets taken down, we'll have the contractor let you guys know when they're done, so you guys can.
So can we put that on the RDA? See? No, can't condition that
Not really.
because it's not an NOI.
I'm happy to reach out to you.
Okay, that would be
Okay,
good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
make a motion to approve someone,
So move.
I second it.
all in favor? Hi, Ron.
Hi, Sally.
I'm on the fence. I mean, it'll go through with everybody
Hi,
else
Jamie.
without me.
Hi, Bill.
Want to abstain?
Yeah.
Hi, Joe.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, Chuck.
Hi, Bill. R.
Okay,
Good luck.
Thanks.
on a three.
Do you want to take her, or should I
Oh.
give it? Thank you very much.
I forgot to put that on. We need to do that. We had the meeting today with the
Didn't hear the results already.
CPA and there are people here.
right.
Let's get it
So
out.
where do we go with this? Let's see.
You seen this?
And just go with it because there are a whole bunch of people here for that.
All right, we'll do.
Here, it's on the agenda. There's other business, but I think we should get it another way.
I think what happened is at some point they raised the number of the road.
Sure.
The Moffitt's here.
All right,
Created more of a day.
people here for the Moffett property number of people?
I think it was something that we were going to discuss. We had a meeting of the Community Preservation Committee this afternoon, to sort of do a straw poll as to whether the committee, I forget what we are, committee, I guess, was in favor of potentially acquiring this property. So right now, it's been in chapter 61 for however long it's been in, I don't know. And the tenets of chapter 61 are that you get reduced taxes during the lifetime of the program, but when it is up for sale, then you have to pay the back taxes. And the town has the right of first refusal on it. They're selling it for $600,000, this property, which is significantly higher than the assessed property value. Not to say it isn't worth it, but that's a problem for a not-for-profit. The land trust, for example, cannot acquire it at that price. The Community Preservation Committee pretty much unanimously thought that this was a property that was worthy, not necessarily from a conservation standpoint, although the potential for the wildlife corridor is fairly significant. There's, if you look from the road toward the south at the two properties, there's the one which is almost entirely wetlands, which is not buildable, it's not part of this, but it is a beautiful big wetland with birds and butterflies and dragonflies and all kinds of stuff in there. No, not really. Not a lot of phragmites. And then bordering on the other side of the property is Mr. Ackley's wet meadow, which is also in conservation. So if this property were to go into conservation, it would connect the two properties. The property itself has some forest value But it's mostly high and dry, so it could be developed. It's 35 acres and an R2 zone. So theoretically, it could have anywhere from 10 to 15 houses in there. The neighbors are really concerned that it will change the character of Interlaken significantly if it becomes developed to that degree. So there are a number of steps that would need to happen for this to become something that the town would accept, and we would have to accept it as at least partner in stewardship, because if it gets CPA money, the town has to be vested in it. So it would go to us. There are other possibilities for what would happen, which might be that it would have a couple of houses built on this property, and then part of it would be put into conservation. There are all kinds of different scenarios that could happen. At this point, we have nothing in place. In order for something to happen this year, it would have to happen by May 1st, because that's the last date for it to go into the town warrant, if the CPA were agreeable to put money into it. They have until June 8th to make the final decision on whether the property is something that we want to exercise our right of first refusal.
What share is the CPA talking about?
CPA was floating around $100,000. It's $600,000 for it. So it would require the Land Trust and the BNRC and Laurel Hill have all not expressed a lot of enthusiasm for this, but they could possibly be persuaded. It is not, in my opinion, from a conservation standpoint, it's not a really optimal property. Although the wildlife corridor, if you attach the two CRs on either side, or the one isn't a CR, but it's unbuildable, makes it more appealing than the property would otherwise be if it were somewhere else.
And has the town been approached about?
Well, that's the thing. There has to be an applicant. And there isn't. So nobody has stepped up and said, this organization, whether it's the Interlaken, citizens group or whatever other group might come to us. I mean, the Land Trust isn't doing it, the NRC isn't doing it, and Laurel Hill isn't doing it. So it's going to have to be some other entity that would come to CPC to ask for this to be put into some sort, to accept the right of first refusal. But there's a lot of money to be raised. So that's where we're at.
Rich, would you like to speak to this?
Rich has been speaking all afternoon.
Yeah, I'm making a lot of friends today. Is it all right if I stand here?
You can,
Lectern?
yeah.
So I got up and spoke today. I think Sally pretty much reiterated the gist of the meeting today. As a nonprofit, we're kind of beholden to certain things. And first and foremost, the asking price far exceeds the fair market value on the property. So it makes it impossible for us to purchase it outright. One, if the fair market value was $600,000, we don't even have that kind of cash in our coffers to be able to pay for it. So it'd have to be part of some sort of alliance. So that's the other thing. We did have conversations with BNRC, with Laurel Hill. I kind of, I don't want to say illegally, but I biked there and I walked the property to look at it. And pretty much my sentiment, as was kind of reiterated by VNRC and Laurel Hill, that it is, and what Sally said, is that it's 5 acres of woodland, mostly white pine. There's a bit of invasive thorny, whatever you want to call it, on the property. Buckthorn is the big one. So, from a CR standpoint, the land trust has been going through this process now with another property in town on Westdale. Since the pandemic, the EOEA has made some changes to their CR template, which puts more requirements on the conservation validity of a property. It can't just simply be kind of like if you go and look at an old CR, many of those things don't necessarily apply anymore. You have to have a baseline, you have to do all these things, and you have to establish some significant conservation value to the property. So I think, and I'm just saying this, from my, non-official standpoint, but I would say that, the woodlands and the corridor probably qualify it for a CR. But aside from that, there's not a lot else there that is arguable compared to, like, if I were to just simply say, if we're not talking about self-conserving land, Craig Moffat's land, it's got multiple ecosystems, there's wetlands, it's a feeder to the bowl, there's all these things. It checks off all the check boxes that says this is a good place to conserve. So from our perspective, it's not a super high priority from a purely conservation standpoint. But we acknowledged that there is a possibility that this can be protected if a consortium of people, predominantly, private residents, come together to raise the money to basically fund a good chunk of this and then come to the town and say, hey, we've got this money, can you help us? At that point, the land trust, if you want to put a CR on it, which typically is the requirement, the land trust is there to help put a CR and set forth in monitoring it every year. But, I just have to point out that from our perspective, with the money that we have on hand, we would not be contributing a whole heck of a lot if we could. So that's where we stand.
Are there individuals interested in chipping in?
They said they were.
So, and there are members, so I have to remind you that the land trust is a board of 14 volunteers. And there were some members on our board who felt that a modest development, if it could happen where there were some conservation setbacks, wouldn't be totally unreasonable for that particular space. I'm not necessarily saying who, I'm just simply saying that there were some people who felt that way. And, at the end of the day, that may not be the worst case scenario. But we also recognize that, that's not in our hands to dictate what that is and how that outcome will be. But, simply if there was a way to say, hey, you want to develop this land and you want to, it's okay to develop the land, but here are some restrictions and we want to put some conservation setbacks on it. That could potentially be a compromise.
So you have 6 weeks to put this together?
Well, it's not in our hands. I think it's really in the hands of private residents to do that. And I won't speak for them because I haven't really had extensive conversations with them on that. But it really comes down to, we're going to need to have some people step up and raise some money to really underwrite this so that it becomes a valid request that CPC can then go forward with.
Yep.
So,
There's a lot of work to be done on the part of.
and it's really not 6 weeks. You really have 2 weeks. Otherwise, it has to
Has to go
go.
on the warrant to go to town meeting.
And if it doesn't go on the warrant, then you have to have a special town meeting, which
Which is a big
might
hearing.
go over
deal.
like a lead brick. So I just bring those things up.
Yeah. I mean, again, when you have a special town meeting for something like that, it's hard to get a quorum too. So that's.
Yeah.
It's a complicated situation and,
Thank you.
it would be good to maintain a wildlife corridor on this property. It would be very good to maintain that. But I don't know that I would be opposed to having a couple or three houses put on it, like in the front area. It's kind of a funny shape. It has a narrow corridor, so that would be the driveway and then it spreads out, so.
It's an R2 zone, so
It's R2.
There's also a pipeline on the edge. So some of it's not buildable on either side.
yeah.
May I ask 3 quick questions?
Sure.
So trying to understand this, all the moving parts. So if there's been a tax relief and round numbers, let's say it's since it last sold in 2012, let's say there's $20,000 or $30,000, and I don't know what the number is in tax relief. Who then pays that to the town, the seller or the new purchaser?
The purchaser.
The new purchaser? Okay. And then let's say the neighbors with the title, the way it's titled, I guess we have the right of first refusal. But let's say that the neighbors want to buy it at the same price that it's under contract for. Do the Moffats get to decide who buys it, or do the neighbors also fall under the town as first right of refusal?
The neighbors would not fall under the town, but the neighbor, if there's a consortium of people and CPC and or Land Trust or one of those organizations contributes, then it would be, I mean, typically a land trust can do a development of, say, one buildable lot and conserve the rest of it. So it would have to go into the town first.
Okay. And then my final question is, I understand that it would be nice to keep it as is, but let's say, somebody was to buy it and, 2 or 3 houses would be nice, but worst case scenario, it looks like they could put up, well, not 16 because of the pipeline, but 13 houses. What is other than losing the land, that's the big drawback, right? Is that we just don't want to lose the land to more development? Is that the upside and the downside? The upside is, a few more houses and a little bit more tax base, and the downside is the land that we lose to the wild habitat. Is that what we're really looking at right here?
Yeah, and the neighborhood, the people in the neighborhood feel that it really, that we're getting to the point where just about every square inch of town is getting built up. And that a few, 3 or 4 houses in there would be nice, possibly a nice addition to the neighborhood, but their concern is that the people who would build in there are maybe not likely to be full-time residents and therefore not necessarily.
They'll be shooting for the 16 houses.
Yeah, they're not necessarily becoming part of the community. There's a very strong bond between the folks that live in Interlaken right now, and they feel like they're a community, and that if this development came in and build a whole bunch of houses, that it would become once again a second homeowner's paradise, and
Right.
with people that aren't necessarily vested in the town because they don't live here full time and they're not voters.
So as our committee and our commission, we can't necessarily, from what I understand, shoot it down under the issue with the conservation side. But so who does get the final choice in this whole decision throughout the?
There's so many moving parts at this point, Chuck, that we really have no idea is what it comes down to. I mean, there's going to have to be an applicant to CPC if they want CPC money. And right now there is not. So they will have to, the folks who are particularly interested in preserving this property are going to have to come together and have a consortium of some kind and come to CPC and say, we want to preserve this property. What can you do for us? And our straw poll said, we all pretty much agree that if they can pull it off,
That's good.
that we would consider
So
we would
it's,
consider voting money or recommending to town meeting that the money we would recommend to town meeting that money.
So
So,
you're-
so if I understand it correctly, then we have a few weeks for the neighbors to put this together and to ask for assistance. But is it 6 weeks from now where if that doesn't happen, then it can sell out from underneath, not from underneath us, that's not a fair statement. That is out of our control as a town, is that reality?
Right.
The 24th.
It's under contract with a buyer. If the town does not exercise its right of first refusal, then my understanding is that sale would go through.
So we don't even have the opportunity to ask the buyer what his game plan is, right? That's not, that we have no purview to
but
that.
it's
or
not,
no
yeah,
But
it's
it's a
not,
private sale.
yeah, it's not up to us.
Yeah,
Okay,
the-
I'm just trying to understand the moving parts. I'm sorry. I just,
Yeah, no, it's okay.
We've been told that the person intends to develop the property.
and as you know, a developer wants to put as many houses up as he can, and I get that. He's in business.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't see a 2 house, 3 houses along the road being, if it does go, being reality.
Not if it goes as a regular sale.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Don't have any vote on anything. We just. this is
No, but again, I
informative.
think, straw poll, what do people think? Is this something that's worth? I mean, the Conservation Commission recommendation from a conservation standpoint is something to be considered. It's no mandate. It's no, we have conservation would end up probably holding the
CR.
partnership CR with somebody
Would
else.
that include the wetlands and everything else?
No.
Just as 35 acres?
Mhm.
Oh, I certainly wouldn't be opposed if they can come up with the money to buy it and keep it from being developed. Yeah, certainly.
So if one of the neighbors had 600,000 just to buy it,
They could.
right? He would have first right to, right? Because it theoretically shouldn't matter to the people that are selling it as long as they get their money.
Well, the town has the right of first refusal, so the neighbors would have to go into a bidding war with the developer.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Unless it's under the.
We're getting in dangerous.
Right, unless it's under the auspices of the town.
And I'm surprised how low the value is on this land when you look at it. It's just, but.
And
clearly
it's also,
real estate.
possible that if there were money put forward by CPA and maybe the land trust and whoever else, that if the neighbors put in money and then there were houses put on the property, like 4 or 5 or 3, that the sale of those house lots could be returned to the CPC and the land trust. I mean, they could recoup that money
Oh, so
by,
you're saying that they could buy it and then flip it to
yeah,
something which
Yes.
they agree with. So instead of, 13 houses, 3 houses.
yes,
It
Oh,
would be,
done.
it would be a revolving fund.
Mm-hmm. Because there was the one Mackinac Road was a property that was up for sale and I don't know who owns the CR, maybe we do. But they were allowed to build one house and the rest of it was put into conservation. And the money from the sale of the house lot, I think went to the land trust, but I'm not positive about that.
Your name again? Yeah, yes, it went to BNRC, wasn't
BNRC, okay.
it?
So one of the not-for-profits can put up the money there. I mean, if they had it, they could put
float
up
it, yeah.
money. And they could basically float the loan when the lot is sold and the house is constructed. It can, then that money can go back to the not-for-profit
Or divided up amongst the,
or divided up amongst the stakeholders. So there are lots of ways to go about it. But first and foremost, there has to be a willingness on the part of the town to exercise their right of first refusal.
So which way are the winds
An
blowing? in downtown?
applicant.
I'm sorry?
We need an
Which way are the
app.
wind, which way are
Right.
the winds blowing downtown? What's the thought process?
Well, we need an applicant first. For CPC to put out any money, we have to have a group come together and say, you know, we're the Interlaken Citizens Brigade and we want to buy this property.
Do we foresee that happening or we have no idea at this point?
They seem to be enthusiastic. Whether they have the money, I don't know.
So you asked
Is there a
about,
Daddy Warbucks in that group?
Sorry, yeah, there are a couple.
Good.
you asked
Okay.
about a straw poll then. right?
Yes, that's all.
If this other group.
If it all comes together, what do we think?
Would we support it?
Yeah,
I think the answer, for me, that would be yes.
that's what we're looking for.
Yes.
Yes.
If they can come up with the money rather than the town putting the whole bill, I'm okay with it.
So essentially they'd be changing the zoning from a 2-acre building lot to a 10-acre building lot, 3 of them.
No,
No.
No, that's oversimplification.
that would defeat the purpose of trying to keep it wooded and habitat rich and
Okay.
there would have to be a roadway or some sort of entrance to it.
Well, I appreciate the hand holding, explaining it to me. I really do.
Jamie, do you have to abstain?
I do.
So we'll take a straw poll.
Aye.
I,
Abstain.
I bet. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, Chuck.
If someone else comes up with the money, but I mean, this, conservation is sort of a zero-sum game. Money that's spent by any of the nonprofits on this property can't be spent on what might be more valuable properties. So if someone comes up with the money, to allow this to work out, yeah, I'm all for preserving land. It just, if you're going to spend the money from the various groups involved, the nonprofits, it's got to have a little more conservation value in sort of my perspective. But yeah, I'd love to see every scrap of land we can protected. If people could come together and organize to do that. I'm a little puzzled that this has gotten down to the 11th hour without, I'm sure this has been on the market. I mean, it must have been for sale for some time. And nobody thought to buy it, to preserve it.
Well, it's been sort of talked about in the back rooms.
Yeah,
We've talked about it a few times in our meetings, but we didn't really come up with any
right. But I mean, the neighborhood,
consensus. Yeah.
That's who seems to be pushing this. And so if this was a threat that was on the horizon with the listing of this property, why is this now down to, like I said, the 11th hour, to come up with some other, try to come up with some solution? I mean, like I said, I'm in favor if this could be pulled off, but it just strikes me as odd that, we're at this point, in this stage of the game.
It's true.
Sally, is this neighborhood more locals than 2-1-2ers than
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
all right, moving on.
Mohammed.
Stockbridge Industrial Park.
Good evening, guys. How you doing?
Well, till now, we're doing pretty good.
All right.
Good news.
So I got some maps here for everybody.
Finalized plans.
Yep. There you go. We got it all done.
Thank you.
My pleasure. There you go. There you go. And there you go.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
So to make it easy for everybody, like we talked about when we did the site visit, we'd like to fence the three areas here and here, with metal fence, leaving the back open 8 inches like we talked about, for the, little predators there. And the measurements there. And then the 2 parking spots. Here, we're gonna leave that open there and then there.
And there's gonna be a gate
Yeah, right in the middle, right here.
for individually for the,
For here, we're gonna leave open right here because it's just gonna be parking, but there'll be a fence going across here. There'll be a gate here and a gate here, right in the middle. So there'll be a fence going right across, but there's gonna be 3 separate tenants here.
okay,
One here, and one here. So I allotted basically parking for here and here for them, and then there'll be a gate here. This will stay open. And then because this fence will here protect this and here, and then this will be a fence right here gated there as well.
And were you going to do a little bit of planting?
I'm gonna do planting in the back. We didn't touch, if you remember on the site visit, we didn't touch anything back here, any of the bushes or trees. But we'll put some flowers and some bushes and things like that back here, maybe some trees and things like that, but none of this got touched or harmed at all.
So we want to just make sure it was native, like not.
100%, no question about it.
And that rear fence line is set back into the cleared area?
Yep.
It's by.
We're minimum 60 feet away from not just the river, but the embankment. The embankment comes in further from the river. So we're not taking it from the river, we're taking it from the embankment.
You mean the top of the bank?
Yeah, exactly, coming up the top.
Yep.
So that's at least 60 feet right there, comfortably. And again, just the backside, we're gonna leave it up 8 inches on the bottom there for you. And then the rest will be fenced in comfortably.
Okay.
And as you saw, the nice cleanup job we did, we got rid of all that stuff.
And the 4 boxes with the Cs in it?
Those are containers, those are storage containers, they've been there. I just put them on the map just so you can see what we're doing with the parking lot.
So they're sort of blocking off.
Yeah, they help a little bit.
Parking area.
Yeah, they help a little bit. There's gaps in between them, but we're gonna fence that in so people can't get through there and so on and so forth. The main thing about the fence is, I don't want to build the fence, but it's a deterrent from what people have been doing there for years, and we're gonna do it close to the road as possible to keep it so people can't come up to the fence and drop off in front of the fence. We've already noticed a couple of times, we caught people on the camera when we had it cleaned, people are still dropping off garbage there. It's mind blowing. I even have signs saying this is under surveillance and people are driving in, they're still dropping stuff off.
didn't believe it.
So, well, we caught them, we got them on camera. So little by little over time, the word will get out, that people are doing this and they're getting caught and they won't do it anymore. You know what I mean?
Well, you just said it on TV, so.
There you go. But it's amazing what people do. It really is. It's truly amazing. Nothing surprises me anymore.
when you, get this all together, could you give us a call so we should come around and take some pictures of it?
Love to, absolutely. No question about it. No question about it. The major work is done already, which you guys have seen, which is great.
Maybe once your landscapers start using it, give us a call and
Sure.
we'll just,
And do we have a notice of intent?
Mhm.
Okay, so we'll just add that as a condition.
we'll just date this and then when we get to the final.
I don't think we have a number yet.
Number from DEP. So can we approve it without a number?
Mm-mm.
but
Oh, you
won't-
sent in the paperwork.
I did. I believe I gave the paperwork to you with the check and then the other one I mailed in, right? The
Yeah, but
environment.
we haven't gotten a number yet, so we can approve it pending a number.
Okay.
Yeah. It's pretty much,
Didn't like that.
it's pretty much a done deal once we get the.
Tucker voted no.
But am I okay now? All we're left to do now is just
Yeah.
actually just build the fence. Everything else has been done to this point. But the only thing we're doing, the mulch bins. Remember the mulch bins? I discussed with you about the mulch bins. Those are going to be the cement blocks like 5 feet tall. They'll be 12 feet wide, for the mulch bins. That's the only 2 things we're left to do. Is put those those cement, barriers up and then put the fence around everything.
All right.
Is that okay?
Yep.
All right,
I
fantastic.
make a motion to sending a member from DEP and with a condition that you let us know when it's done so we can take it.
Sure, absolutely.
I'll second. All in favor?
Hi, Sally.
Hi, Ron.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Bill L.
Hi, Joe.
Hi, Karen.
I'll be right.
Thank you.
Hi, Chuck.
Oh,
Thank you.
sorry.
Bill?
Aye. Bill R. I was muted.
Okay.
Okay.
All set?
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you for your time and all your help. I'm grateful. Thank you. Be well.
Where are we?
All right. We are in Lotus
Lisa
Bend 10, 11
Goldman.
Wheatley.
SK Design, 11 Wheatley Drive. Remediation of unpermitted work, plantings, patio, lawn, driveway.
Did we miss?
I know.
Good evening, Matthew Punson from SK Design Group.
I need names for everybody here.
That's what I was just about to mention.
Thank you.
Justin Winters is the landscape architect that provided the plans in your application.
Winters?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And Dan Small, who is the nephew of Lisa Goldman, is the owner of the property. He
Okay.
wasn't able to attend, but Dan is very familiar with the property and the project and hopefully can help answer any questions. I submitted an RDA in January. It was determined that you wanted a notice of intent. I submitted the notice of intent. The project itself hasn't changed. It's a different form. I think it was deemed more appropriate to have a notice of intent. Thus, you can have notifications, of course, associated with it. So work has occurred on the property over the past 18 months or so, or maybe even 2 years. I think everyone's aware of that. I have my plans that can, that was part of the RDA in January, and the plans are essentially the same with a little bit more information that David Cameron requested. We also submitted for a stormwater permit. That, I believe, was essentially on hold until this was submitted, and I think you folks wanted to do a site visit. When we were here in January, there was a foot of snow on the ground or whatever it was. Someone said, we really want to do a site visit, so until then, now it's now, right? Obviously, the snow's gone. So just to familiarize everyone with the property, and this is, I know that the TV can't see it, but it was in the application. It's roughly a 3.5 acre parcel from Wheatley Drive, sloped eastward down toward Lily Pond. The house is on the middle to eastern part of the project. Majority of the work that you see from the road is tree clearing. I think that's pretty obvious. That's occurred on the uphill side of the house itself. That's actually outside the buffer zone. So if the focus of the notice of intent is work in the buffer zone, that primarily occurs east of the house, which there was some activities over there, including some tree clearing and some work on the patio around the pool. They also upgraded the septic system, which included a new septic tank. As far as proposed work in the buffer zone, it's the majority of it is really new plantings, which I'm going to let Justin describe in better detail on his plans. But other work associated in the buffer zone that's a little bit more from an engineering perspective, I guess I'll call it, is paving the driveway and flattening out the backyard by extending a retaining wall. I'm going to go to my next plan that shows the enlarged area. Let me take a step back. This is a more detailed overall site plan that was included with both the stormwater application and the notice of intent. Showing work that some proposed work, again, on I'll call it the uphill side of the house, which is outside of the buffer zone. But the work in the buffer zone is down in this area that I have on my next plan. So the buffer zone line, and I forgot to highlight it, so I apologize. It's this kind of semi-bold line that cuts through the rear of the property. The house being here, this is the pool. So the buffer zone is from here downward. Buffer zone for this project is off of a bordering vegetated wetland. There's a bank associated with Lily Pond, but that's much further away. So the bordering vegetated wetland is the more restrictive, call it buffer zone. So work in this area is the planting of trees, installing an underground dry well to take rooftop runoff, flattening out the backyard, and some of the previous work that was done was installing new septic tanks. I'm gonna let Justin show his, well, let me, before he gets up here. We did receive DEP comments. There was 2 comments and I forgot to print those. I believe number 1 referred to, there was a previous superseding order of conditions from 2000 or so, 2001, give or take. There was a certificate of compliance from 2003. That certificate of compliance said, they signed off, this is DEP, signed off with the condition that you follow the planting plan that was submitted in 2000. I was only just made aware of that last week.
Oh, and I
Go
didn't
ahead.
see those DEP comments. Did
I
you get
did,
them? Could you
yeah.
send them to us? I didn't see. them.
Yeah, I tried to print them out for tonight, but it was one of the things that doesn't print for me.
Can you just forward
No,
them?
the DEP comments, do you remember?
Yeah.
Did you get them
Oh, fine. You printed the planting
from
plan.
Mark?
If I did, I missed them.
I'll hand it over to you in just a
Actually get
second.
his.
So this is a small version of the planting plan that.
Can you just back up and
Sorry.
say that again? That seemed important. So there was.
Superseding order of conditions issued by DEP.
Yeah.
Let me rephrase, the superseding certificate of compliance.
Yeah.
From DEP said, project is done, we approve with the condition
There was a planting.
that there's a planting plan. It was actually referenced in that, certificate of compliance.
Yeah.
From 2000, prepared by White Engineering, that I got a copy of.
Okay.
That the trees shown on this plan need to be I'm kind of summarizing, need to be planted in, well, if they're being planted, they should be staying there, right? The intent isn't to plant a tree and cut it down, right? So we were just made aware of this last week.
And those are the trees that were cut down?
Well, I don't think all of them. I think there might be some. But I think actually Dan Small can attest that some trees weren't even there when Mrs. Goldman bought the property just a few years ago. I think there's a chance over the past 20 years, some other trees have been cut down.
There was a lot of, that was a big hairy deal that the superseding order.
I guess what I'm getting at is when a certificate of compliance was issued in about 2004, from 2004 to 2021, that 17-year window, I don't know what happened there.
Well, we know what happened because they're all gone.
I understand that. I don't know if all those trees were cut down. Some trees could have been cut down before 21,
Yeah.
which would have been before the current owners.
So not to jump around, but do we know how many trees were cut down? I mean, it was massive.
Of the entire site or just buffer zone? Because this is an NOI for work in the buffer zone.
Yeah, that are subject to us.
In the buffer.
Also have stormwater.
So you gotta, so I know there's two items on the agenda, stormwater and NOI. I just want to make sure I'm answering what you're looking for. So I don't have an exact tree count on any because the trees are gone in a majority of the again, I refer to it as the uphill section. Those stumps have been removed and I can look at an aerial photo. I can't count trees off an aerial photo.
Yeah, why don't you, you have the plan.
Yep.
That they approved and they wanted, right?
Oh, sorry, back to.
In the buffer zone.
Yeah, correct, totally.
So you could take a look out there and see if they're there. If they're not, they're cut down.
I'm pretty sure these are not there. That much I can tell you, these are not there.
And
So
how many,
you're saying that all of that stuff got wiped out?
I believe so.
and can you tell from that how many?
1, 2, 3,
Hello, Ron
6,
Brokaw.
9, 10, 11, 13. Who am I addressing?
There's 13.
Hello, Ron. Peter.
Peter, hold on, please.
Yep.
He's the contractor involved. This shows 13 trees to be planted in the buffer zone from a plan in the year 2000.
Yeah,
I haven't taken this plan out in the field myself and said this, and this. This shows 13 proposed. I would want to walk and identify them just to try and maybe get Justin's help because it just refers to some trees and I'm not a tree guy. So,
it seems like that's a piece of information we need.
I understand. Yep. I don't disagree. Again, I was just made aware of this about a week ago.
Yeah.
This condition.
Yeah.
Joe, you remember this property.
Yeah. There's more than just that taken down than just that.
I guess.
It's a large window.
So
Opportunity.
I'm generally of the opinion some of the trees that were removed in the buffer zone was done even prior to the current owner. That's my instinct.
They may not have survived.
Either they didn't survive or they were intentionally taken down. That I don't know.
Pretty wet down there, as I recall.
There's a wetland, there's a wet meadow.
Yeah, so it
Wetlands.
may be that the trees that they planted were not
Don't know.
able to
I'm
survive.
not sure.
I can't see that plan. Can you just point to the house, to everybody?
The house is up here near my, this side.
And that's the water.
The water's down on this edge, with north being that. North is up on this plan. So what we'll probably end up doing is taking this plan and overlaying it with our current plans, to see what is there, what was previously approved and isn't there, and how does it work with Justin's landscaping design. He's already taken a little bit of time to compare the two.
Okay.
And he can probably give some better information on that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Do we know the size? I mean, if I'm remembering correctly, it was a clear cut, right?
Yes,
So I have all that information in my NOI, but.
And it was is that the 1900 square?
So that was work in the buffer zone.
Right. And that's,
So I estimate 1,900 square feet of vegetation
Right.
/ trees was removed in the buffer zone
okay.
subsequent to the current owner purchasing the 2021. And I don't know, we can look at aerials again. There is some limitation to how much you can tell from aerials.
Is there any work that was done outside of the buffer zone in the resource area, closer to the?
No,
No clearing?
No clearing, no work done in the resource area that I can tell. I've been to the property plenty. I think either by luck or by intent, they stopped short of the actual wetlands, the BVW. No work was done in the resource area. That I'm fairly confident in saying. So we had that flagged. We know where the work was done and it wasn't in the wetlands.
I mean, you could tell by looking at the neighbors on both sides to see if there's trees in that zone.
In the buffer zone.
Even closer to.
Understood.
Lily Pond, if there were trees there.
it's pretty densely forested on the,
All the way down to the.
on either side.
Mhm.
If you stand on the road and look at this house, there's a lot to the left. It's actually undeveloped,
Yeah,
pretty generally wooded. There's a lot to the right with a house on it.
All the way down almost to the water.
I don't know if it's as far down as the water.
No, it's, I don't just,
Halfway down, right?
like, where's the house?
Here's our house.
Okay, so there, this is my property
Yeah,
line.
correct.
Their house is right here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about even with.
So where would the wooded material, the trees have been growing if there were any?
On our lot?
No, just in general on the surrounding area, so you could see
Well,
if anything was cleared.
back to this lot to the north.
I guess maybe the old aerials.
The lot to the north it's essentially completely wooded.
Yeah.
Like almost 100%, except for a trail that goes through here. And the lot to the south, it has a house and a driveway on it, and it's, partially cleared for that. And the rest, I think, is generally woods. But yeah, that shows up in the aerial.
Oh, yeah.
And you might, if you're pulling up
Probably pull up an aerial.
plans online, yeah. So it was in my application also.
Okay. Yeah, just to establish what's going on.
That's what it looks like now,
So
bro.
here's what we're talking about, like these things here, this woods right
Yeah.
down to the water.
I understand.
Same here.
I understand.
More than likely, it came through here.
Well, you go 100 years ago, 100%. This entire lot was wooded at one time. In 2020, in 2000, they got a superseding order of conditions from the DEP to build the house with some conditions. They signed off on it, saying it was done right. And then the one thing that seems to be a little bit out of order are the trees that were supposed to be planted in the buffer zone. I'm not sure if that
Just
helps.
Just the buffer zone. Mhm.
It was buffer zone trees.
Okay.
Which may or may not have been done because now they're not there.
It was,
So, but they were signed off on, so they should have been there at one.
There's a few trees on the south end of our property in the buffer zone that are there. I just would have to correspond those to this plan to see if it's the same ones.
Yeah.
There's some that aren't though.
the ones right in the center where you can see the pond.
Those are not there anymore. I agree.
So we need a plan of what's going on here.
Okay.
Okay, I think.
Yeah. Would you like to see the planting plan that's proposed?
Sure.
Justin, if you don't mind, and I'm gonna pull out a full size so you guys can look off, but he can walk you through it.
I only made 5 copies. I apologize. How's everyone doing tonight? Justin Winfield. Nice to meet you all.
I'm not sure who wants what. I'll go here. This is the. 100 BZ down.
All the plants that we're proposing for the project.
Matter there, and set down to the wall. Up so that there's wildlife
I would
paths.
have to double check. It's been linked, I just don't remember that spacing.
Is this the plan?
It's a little bit more detailed. That's just has less notations, but it's
Fine.
same exact.
Right.
Thank you.
All right.
Oh, this one has all the.
Would you like me to start? You want me to describe it?
I'll just do a quick, so the buffer zone is essentially between the house and the wetlands to the east or towards the lake. That's the buffer zone area. On this plan and even those smaller plans, there's a label 100 BZ. So from there down is buffer zone. I would say, 3/4 or more is outside of the buffer zone, but covers the entire remainder of the site.
So is what you're telling us just the buffer zone or is it?
I think he's gonna tell you everything.
We're just.
Have we shared
You
this?
tell me what you want to hear.
This is
I'll
all
I'll tell you what you want.
Been online, was,
It's part of PDF that I submitted. I sent it to David too.
I'm only interested
I
in.
think David's seen it.
David, have you seen this? David?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
I had a couple questions. Were there any updates to the stormwater permit application? Not that I would.
Not the application, but on the plan, David, you asked for a few things. I labeled the different watersheds and drainage areas on the plan
Okay,
with those symbols that match up with our hydrocad calculations.
okay.
Like a 1S.
I didn't get that document, so I'll have to look at that at some of the.
Okay.
But I'll stick with the NOI for now. I did review the NOI. My general impression is this represents a good improvement on the site. I still think it would be beneficial for the commission to do a site walk. None of us have been down there and even seen the buffer zone or wetland. And I think that would just add a little bit more context to what's being proposed, although I'm encouraged by what's being proposed and it's good that the property owner is taking the commission's concerns to heart and they've hired this firm to help whip things into shape. So I'm encouraged by that.
All right, so if you wanted to refer to sheet L2.03, which is the third sheet in the package, that focuses primarily on the buffer zone. Dancing plan. Right here. Right now, our scope is primarily just focused on. Talking about today, and so. We are introducing, there's a developed part of the site directly adjacent to the residence, which is right here on the plan. It's elevated and there's a retaining wall that was, when I was out there, it was existing, so the retaining wall existing on site. An existing pool, there was existing conifers along the edge, I believe those are cedar. That they were existing here, the few trees down at this location existing, and everything else we are proposing. So off the house, we have a small lawn terrace area because it's just directly off the house for the owner's use. But directly adjacent to that, leading down towards the wetland. Here's your 50-foot buffer, here's your 100-foot buffer. We have a wet wildflower meadow that we're introducing here, all natives, to take up that floor of the space here.
What is there now?
I've only been out there in the wintertime, and so it looked to me to be a meadow, a wet meadow of itself, but I don't know if there's any invasive volunteers, what the matrix is in the plan. So our recommendation would be to infill with true natives in the meadow area and then remove any invasive area.
And that's here on the,
That is correct. That's primarily between the 150-foot buffers. We don't propose anything beyond the 50-foot buffer. We didn't want to do any further disturbance in that area. I didn't want to do any disturbance in that area. From what I could see visually, I did not see any disturbance that I could tell. The 50-foot buffer, we were brought onto the project in January, so we've only seen it in.
I'm pretty sure that retaining wall was put in when they put in the pool.
Okay.
Originally from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That makes sense. It looks dated. So, we're picking up at that point, introducing the wildflower meadow. You can see what was initially, I don't want to jump around, but the conditioned planting plan from 2000. I went ahead and highlighted these so that we could understand. They're proposing 13 trees and shrubs in this area, whereas we're proposing 93 trees and new trees and shrubs and a wildflower meadow in the exact same area.
So,
Because I don't get superseding.
And I want to point out that maybe they weren't aware at the time that crack willow is an invasive species now designated by the state of Massachusetts, so we wouldn't want to put that in.
Right.
And again, ash, the white ash has the ash borer, so we wouldn't want to put that back in. And then the sugar maple, I don't think it's appropriate for, it's an upland tree, so we wouldn't have it. We do have red maples called out here, but we have those represented elsewhere on the site. In fact, we're lining the driveway entrance with, these are all red maples, so it's going to be a beautiful entrance. So maybe we don't necessarily need to include those. We also have black cherry represented upland as well. And what we do have highlighted in green is actually within the buffer zone. We have the clethra, the Cornus Florida, and so we've got those represented. That's the sweet pepper bush. And then the only ones that are not represented anywhere on the site are the black chokeberry and the hop hornbeam, which are lovely trees. I think they're fine representatives, but we're introducing 115 trees on the site. We've got quite a variety, all natives and adaptive natives to the area. So adaptive natives are trees that have been present in the area for over 200 years, are thriving, and essentially are while they're not original natives, they are considered to be appropriate species for the region.
I don't know the term. So what's an example? What's an adaptive?
An example of an adaptive native is Salix babylonica, weeping willow.
Okay.
And we do have we understand that there is not that this matters, but we were trying to be thoughtful of it. The stormwater runoff is excessive on the site. And we're trying to mitigate it and certainly we introduce those Salix babylonica to assist with some of that water uptake. They are thirsty trees, as we all know.
Are there any evergreens included in this?
Evergreens, there are certainly evergreens. We've got hemlock. We've got a dense, the Suga canadensis.
The Delta is really white.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
We can certainly do a cedar. Well, we can substitute cedar, arborvitae, for that exact same location. And I'm happy to do
We have
that.
a lot of deer here.
Yes, but the site is pretty well fenced. I know.
Yeah, because the native, they were gonna, there's no point in spending the money on putting in hemlocks at this point. Because
Unless
you're
you're
just gonna lose them.
treat
unless
them
you
every
want-
year.
Yeah,
We'll find a
Landscaper with some time on their hands could come in and spray it.
Does the.
we've been, we've been trying to figure all this out and we've been watching videos and going to seminars and doing all kinds of stuff about what we can do about the hemlocks. And the bottom line is there is no actual substitute for a hemlock.
So don't put that, it doesn't make sense to put them in.
Yeah,
Understood, understood. We've had
The
success in some
arborvitae will do.
projects and we've had
They're really
challenges in
spreading now.
other projects.
Spreading.
I think arborvitae would be a terrific substitution and we'll certainly do that.
there's a
I
native.
think if you look sideways into what is on the other properties, you get a good idea on what's really right.
Yes, yes, absolutely,
Good point.
absolutely. Um, but we do have other evergreens on site as well. We've got sorry, if I have not looked at the plans. That recently, let's see, trees, we've got the juniper, Virginiana, we're gonna drive and the gardens. That'll be nice. And we do have some arborvitae here. There is arborvitae lining, the property. Yeah, around the perimeter of the property, so.
That'll keep them happy to do. Yeah, where did you put enough in, you don't see what they've done.
Right.
Where did you put the Aronia? Up by the house?
Aronia? Did I say Aronia? I don't believe I have that on here. Did I say that?
I didn't hear that.
Chokeberry.
Chokeberry, we didn't,
Oh, I thought I heard you.
that was previously called for on the condition plan. But those are one of the two species that we don't have represented on the plan right now. We just got this, so
So we should go look at it?
Yeah.
Is that a site visit?
David, if there's a superseding order, which there is, and you have lasting conditions. And as Justin suggested, some of the requirements of the ongoing conditions are no longer appropriate. How do we go about reconciling that?
Why are the ongoing, I'm sorry if I missed it, why are the ongoing conditions no longer appropriate?
There was a couple of species are now considered invasives.
Like planting ash trees.
Oh, okay.
And ash trees probably is not a good idea.
Okay.
How do we reconcile that?
Since it technically was a Mass DEP permit, right? Because it
Yeah.
was a superseding order. You could call Mike McHugh and say, what does DEP want to do with this? Because it's technically, if there's an ongoing condition for a permit they issued, that's within their wheelhouse, not yours. I mean, I've got ideas that I think are creative, but we don't want to step on their toes.
No, I know. That's what I'm asking is I would think we would want to go to them and say, hey, these ongoing conditions are a
Practical
problem.
answer would be come up with some substitutes for those and try to match at least the quantities for what they wanted in that permit. And
Okay,
maybe just toss that out to Mike McHugh and see what he says.
okay. So can we do that? The ones that you think are not gonna work?
Yes. Yeah. I can coordinate. How would you like you to submit that?
Just, if you could just send me an email, and then I can forward it on to him and say, how do we deal with this?
You got it. And I'll have our proposed substitutions
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Okay, go see it.
One more question I had, I guess, just in anticipation of this being continued is, I counted, if I'm reading the plan correctly, I counted 4 trees that are proposed for the buffer zone. Is that accurate? Or am I misreading the plan?
For the buffer zone?
Yeah,
No. You're saying buffer zone, 100-foot buffer or a 50-foot buffer?
100-foot buffer zone. I see a weeping
One,
willow.
two.
I see what I think are 3 river birches.
We have Am Lake here. We have weeping willow. We have-
That's shadbush, right?
That's a shrub.
That's a shrub.
Correct. You're right. That is a shrub. Apologies. It's serviceberry. There are tree forms of serviceberry. And this is intended to be a tree, but we can confirm that. We do have the Betula Niagara, we have the Salix, and then we have the Quaking Aspen, properties terminal.
Oh, I missed that one.
That's all the way up by the auto court. So I believe we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6, what do I have on my 6? And then we have a large number of shrubs that we are including in the totaling 93 per our count, plus the wildflower meadow.
Okay, so I think, so for the large number of trees that were cut down, that's all, that's the only,
The number you just gave, the 93,
yeah,
that's
that's,
buffer zone.
That's, everything there is just for the buffer zone.
okay, but that's not 93 trees,
That's 93 trees and shrubs in the buffer zone.
We're most
only.
concerned about the trees.
Yeah.
Okay,
We'd like more
6 new trees.
Yeah, let's try to get,
Just 6?
yeah, I was thinking, when you said 93, I thought it was 93.
Sorry, my apologies.
So let's try to up that for more trees and fewer shrubs.
Okay.
Because,
Also, how does that take into account the trees that apparently are not there from the original plan? So would it be those 6 trees that you're proposing plus the trees that aren't there?
I think Justin has to take the approved DEP plan, overlay it with his plan,
Right.
and see what makes sense.
Okay.
Which he hasn't done yet.
Right.
We decided that. Is that fair, Justin?
That's fair. Absolutely.
So we'll have more than 6 trees ultimately.
100%. We can do that.
I'd like to see, 20, 30 trees. There were a lot of trees taken down.
And they
In the
were,
buffer zone? Okay.
They were
I don't think
big.
there was 20 or 30 trees taken.
there were big trees. They were big trees.
Okay.
I was there.
Okay, so if they were big trees, little trees don't do with big trees.
Well, I think when we go to the site visit, hopefully.
Yeah, but I mean, they were stumps like this.
So you kind of got a restorative plan, it's a new plan, it's a little involved.
And then you did have a number for the number of trees sort of on the rest of the property, which also got really cleared.
What's a rough total proposed tree count, entire property?
115 approximately.
Trees.
We have some stakes
Trees.
delineating the buffer zone.
Yep.
So we're, when we walk into here.
The wetlands are flagged currently.
Yeah,
You want a 100-foot buffer zone line?
yep.
Anything else before the site visit?
Well, where these 93, would like to know the upslope and the downslope generally.
So I'm gonna caveat this. Apologies. My numbers are dealing specifically with the ornamental trees in the center of the property. As Dan mentioned, they have planted in approximation of 500 arborvitae at the perimeter of the site,
Sure.
approximately. So my numbers are
In addition to those.
in addition to those.
Okay.
Green giants?
Green giants, they appear to be, yes.
Yeah.
I did not.
Hello, Ron. It's Peter Shuck.
Yes, Peter.
Yeah, I planted 450 green giants, 220 on each side of the property. And we planted 110 privets on the front side of the property, up by the road. So Mrs. Goldman has put in almost 600 trees. I have put in personally with my help.
Did you say privet?
Privets along the top of the road, 110 privets and 220 green giants on the left hand and the right hand side of the property that we have planted.
Privet is not a native species.
What does it have to do with being by the road?
Yeah, it's outside our jurisdiction.
Hmm.
It's outside of.
Just.
It's up.
Us.
All right, we'll pass on that.
So
for now.
for the site visit, once we establish the time, so we'll see the wetlands, we'll see a buffer zone. You would like to see where the proposed trees and bushes in the buffer zone are gonna be? I'm just prepared.
No, not the whole.
I would say 90 is quite a few. I think maybe
Oh,
we can show you
we don't
the
need
more
to.
significant ones.
Yes,
Okay,
Yeah.
General
I
area.
think we're more interested in the 50-foot and the,
okay.
and the, you know,
Maybe we should do a
What's
50-foot line
getting-
also?
what's getting put in that was put in presumably under the DEP
Okay,
and it isn't.
okay.
And that hits the LPOD when you use the 50-foot line too, right?
Yeah, the LPOD is 150 feet.
From the water body.
Yes.
Does the BBW count?
Not.
No, it's from the water.
Lily Pond. I think we're well over 100. I can scale it.
Okay,
I think I know we're 100 feet or more from Lily Pond. I think we're actually closer to like 200 feet. I could actually tell you short.
All right, so let's set a date. I think be there this Friday.
This is,
Next
this
Friday,
is a
it's fine.
3-week gap.
Because they gotta try to get 8 people all together.
Is it?
It's one of those, it happens twice a year that we have 3 weeks between
About
meetings.
next Friday.
So
Friday after this?
May 2nd,
I'm sorry?
we're thinking about.
May
May
2nd.
2nd. I mean-
David, May 2nd.
Oh, I'm going home to see my wife.
Oh.
I'm flying over to Florida.
I can't get there.
I'll be
Oh,
there.
you know.
Second.
That's fine.
Someone from the 4 of us will be there.
Okay.
Whatever day or time you choose.
3 o'clock.
Perfect.
May 2nd.
That works, David? Okay,
Yep, that works for me.
great, thank you.
I think starting to go in the right direction.
So a few stakes, so we know the 100-foot, 50-foot, maybe the DEP trees that were or weren't, aren't there. And everything else is pretty much point and tell. We'll have the maps.
I don't have, can you send me the DEP comments just so I have them?
Can you produce a document, Matt, that we can look at out in the field? You know, the trees that are missing and that kind of stuff.
I can work on it. You might ask, what's today? Today's 2. Oh, that gives us, over a week.
Just so we can
About
document
10 days.
what we're doing.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, what else we got here?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's continued to, I don't know the date now.
What is the next regular meeting?
Okay. Do you want me to leave this one with you?
The 13th.
This is the original.
Original.
That's the original.
That's the original conditions.
Well, he may be using it.
Here, I'll take a picture and we can leave the master with you. How about that? Should have scanned this.
I feel better to look at it, 'cause that's an important document.
Sure.
You take.
Oh, you're well, that's
I think you.
fair enough. Okay.
Not sure if it's still updated, but probably gonna change.
Can we hold on?
You can hang on whatever you want. Yeah. What is this right here? I'll leave it right here for it. They will change though, based on most likely down here.
More than likely, yeah.
Just so you know.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh,
Thank you.
I saw another item on the agenda for,
The stormwater.
well, then before that, there was 5 Wheatley Drive.
Yes.
So
Ronald and Sherry.
Sally knows that I've been hired to request the certificate of compliance for that. So I now have the task of going back 35 years to figure out what was approved and what's been built and compare the two, which I haven't done yet because I just saw the plans tonight.
Okay,
Okay,
good luck.
Thank you.
we'll see you see someone in a second.
Thanks.
Well said. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's continued also.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Lakeview Drive, that's right, Brian.
David, anything?
Been amended order for that.
All this stuff is important.
Yeah.
Again?
And Rick.
Brian, why are you here? 3 Lakeview Drive. I was trying to remember.
Are you all set, David?
I am if you are.
I think we are.
You're welcome to stay, but if you would like to leave, it's fine.
No, I will plan on seeing you guys on May 2nd at 3 PM on a Wheatley Drive.
Great.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if anything comes up
I know,
between
sure.
now and then that you need me for, just let me know.
We'll let you know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Good evening.
We had, whether it was an amended order or
Throwing things that didn't.
throwing stuff at us.
Brian Sider with Foresight Land Services for the record, and
David Potter, Great Never Design.
so this was 3 Lakeview Drive was a approved order of conditions on Stockbridge Bowl for the demolition of the house that was there and construction of a new house that was approved about a year ago. And the owners wanted to go through a redesign of the actual layout of the floor plan of the house. We spoke about this last meeting. Essentially taking the second story that was above the garage and moving it to a 1-story living arrangement. And so this is the approved house here with the garage kind of sticking out the back toward the driveway. We've taken that and reduced the size of the garage slab to a 1-car garage, sort of oriented it a little, well, it had to be oriented this way because of well setbacks as well as the setback from the property line. But along with that, to add a bedroom downstairs, the house got a little bit larger by about 200 square feet, say 15 by 12 room or so. So we're just requesting a minor revision to the existing order of conditions to approve this floor plan versus the old one. And what we spoke about last week was I should step back, the driveway is being reoriented for guest parking in order, and also to get into this garage in a different orientation. And in order to do that, we're proposing taking down 2 trees. I believe it's a 12-inch and a 15-inch pine. And what we spoke about at the last meeting was mitigation or replacement of those trees 2 to 1. In order to take those trees down, which are they're actually outside the 100-foot buffer, I believe. But we're proposing 5 river birch at the lakefront instead. And oh, sorry, no, not. So we put a group of 3 river birch here by the dock, the existing dock, and then 1 kind of within these garden beds that are proposed. Along with that, I took the total square footage of new plantings. If you remember, this is all lawn along the lakefront now. It's quite a bit of lakefront, and most of it is unvegetated. So we were proposing mitigation with these 1,000 square feet of new planting beds. And I've increased that by 20% to 1,200 square feet. So each of these is a little larger, in addition to the 5 trees that we've added, the 5 river birch trees. And just to reiterate, the house itself, which is on piers, the house itself, the footprint is slightly larger, but we've reduced the size of both the screen porch, the patio, and the garage slab, which more or less is a net increase in impervious area. So just, I guess that's my recap, just looking to approve the new floor plan. I have certainly it's not incredibly relevant, but an elevation drawing of the front side of the house. You can see the screen porch is the closest
well, I shouldn't say that. The closest the house was to the lake, the existing house was 51 feet. The new house will now be 52 feet from the lake, so it's no closer to the lake. We've also taken the patio and moved it back next to the porch. So now that is also further from the lakefront.
Thank you for doing all that.
So, sure.
Took us a while to get.
Did we have some questions about breaks in the foliage?
So the breaks we were proposing are add up to 35 feet. So I believe under the
I think it has,
LPOD, it's a 35-foot.
but I think it has to be contiguous.
Has to be contiguous. I would think not being contiguous would be better for the lakefront.
I don't know.
That was our
I just thought it was contiguous.
So we already, again, we're reducing this 200 feet of lake frontage down to 35 feet is the way I look at it. So you're leaving some openings for access, but.
It says contiguous, so Brian, that's it. But I think what you're doing is good, so.
How many trees are gonna be planted along the lakefront itself? Besides the 5 you just mentioned, what was already there?
Well, the rest of them were shrubbery. Some of them are taller shrubs, but the planting plan calls out a number of shrubs. A sweet pepper bush, button bush.
But no trees.
Spice bush. I don't believe there's any trees other than that proposed. There is a large willow tree that's being protected.
Yeah.
The spice bush is pretty good.
Yeah, they're pretty tall bushes. And these are all 3 to 4 foot shrubs that have been proposed. They wouldn't be put in as a little more established.
You know what it said?
What's that?
I'm trying to look it up, if you know that it says.
Let's say contiguous. Yeah, Sally looked it up.
I would just say that it was approved as is by the planning board under the LPOD, which that's an LPOD regulation, I believe, so.
Yeah, that's their regulation, yeah.
Right. So it was approved that way.
Okay.
No.
Thank you for doing all
I'll make a motion that we approve that.
Second.
With the 5 trees, the improvements.
What we're asking for is whether or not what they're proposing represents a significant change to what was approved. So do they need to, or do they not need to file an amended order of conditions?
Well, we decided last meeting, they did.
We did.
We did. We already made that decision that they did, right?
I think we discussed that it was under the existing order of conditions, it would still follow the same conditions. So we're requesting simply a minor revision, which would be.
I know we want.
So this says our
The
minute
other one.
say commissioners felt we needed a new plan detailing the changes which were significant enough to require an amended order. I thought that was the decision. I mean, that's what this says, and I thought that was the decision from the last meeting.
I certainly don't recall that. I think a new notice of intent would be.
Not a new notice of intent, just an order, an amended order.
Okay, so an amended order would need to go through advertising and
Yes.
be reposted for, I suppose, for another public hearing.
But
The
that
intent
is-
here was that we're
That's the finished.
adding improvements and not changing really the overall effect on the
We can change our minds.
resource area, I guess. So I don't recall that being a vote at the last
I'm gonna
meeting.
change my mind. I thought, that was my memory from the last meeting, that was what we decided. People remember differently?
I don't know, you got the documentation on
That's what I remember.
what's gonna be happening right here.
But these are our minutes, we asked.
Well, that's good that you got
What
that.
I recall from the last meeting when we left was that you were fine with the plan as long as we added some more trees. And then you wanted an
And showed
upgraded
where they
plan.
were.
I remember Bill up here really joining and saying he agreed that we needed an amended order and we voted. I thought we voted on it and that's what our minutes reflect.
Where's that?
My understanding was that we voted that you needed a new plan showing where the plantings would be, because we had decided on adding a certain number of trees, 2-to-1 mitigation, but they just weren't shown on the plan.
Well, I didn't see your notes.
I guess we're requesting
My notes.
if you could vote on if it
I thought we would.
is a minor revision or not.
I don't think it's a minor revision. I think it's a good plan. I approve, I think it's a good plan, but I thought we had voted that it needed an amended order.
So can't we just vote to approve it, considering?
We could change our minds
Yeah,
and
so
say
we
that
have the-
having received the plans, we
Put it to a no vote.
are okay with it, or we can say, no, we still want the,
So if we do that, what's lost? I mean, my concern is, as I said at the last meeting, when we go look at this down the line, we have.
well, we would have
This is
to,
what we will have.
And what is the paperwork? What does the
we will have
paperwork
this
say?
plan,
Yeah,
theoretically. We will have this plan. Yeah.
Yeah, you have this plan, so just reference a minor revision to this. the
But is
date
it-
of this plan,
It's not recorded
Link.
that way.
the plan on,
I think it's not. I think we need it done.
I think-
it just gets filed with it, the plan.
It would get
the
filed
conditions
with it would be in our files
Right.
that this is the plan. But the problem is that it would not be in the order of conditions and therefore would not get filed with the Registry of Deeds.
Oh, okay. I get
I think what we said last time, which is why.
I mean, that's the downside. If we think that it's relatively significant, the difference between this plan and the one we had before. And if it's significant enough that when we go back to look at a certificate of compliance, we're looking at basically the wrong plan, because that's what was filed with the Registry of Deeds, which went with the order of conditions. Then that's where it becomes problematic.
And I think it is significant enough for changes.
The registry order would reference a file, which would have this plan in
Some of this conversation.
So just to.
But when I
Summarize what.
when I do the order of conditions, I reference a file with a date or a plan with a date. The plan with a date that and I can't say that I know that it's been recorded yet, but it should have been. The plan with a date is what is on the order of conditions. So this new plan and this new date is not what's on the order of conditions that's filed with the registry.
Correct, but then that's even referencing the file if it typically have superseded on the old plan.
Especially since we see things like we heard tonight that are 30 years old that we're going back to look at. I think it needs to be done cleanly.
I mean, it would be,
It's very typical every time that minor changes are made, they don't get read.
but that's why we have to decide whether we think it's minor or not.
And I thought we made that decision last time. We said the changes were significant enough to require an amended order. That's
That's what
we already
that's what we
made
said.
that decision. It's confusing to then the next meeting change that decision.
That's why there is an amended order of conditions, because that way the amended order of conditions goes to the registry to get filed. And that plan is referenced at the Registry of Deeds, whereas
I guess that just wasn't clear coming onto this because we would have done that in order to have the time to publish it so that we could be presenting an amended order.
And I'm not sure where the communication broke down because I left the meeting thinking really clear that that's what you needed.
That's my impression as well. That's my memory, is that we decided it was not minor changes.
Yeah.
And
so
specifically for the reason that we have to be able to go back and reference exactly what was planned, not what was planned previously, when we go to look at compliance.
Right.
Where it's 3. which one?
I mean, the file gets, the new plan gets filed in our plans, our files. And as you heard from Matt earlier,
Right, I think
we
it's
have one.
And then the other one behind it is superseded, so you'd know to look. at
We
the
would
one.
know that, but it's not recorded anywhere.
So 20 or 30 years, whatever, it's not going to be, it's going to be the same thing we're dealing with now anyway. In other words, it's such an old thing, we have to record it so that it's accurate. Correct? I mean, am I missing something?
No, I mean, the process is that when we're presented with, when an engineer, or whoever, the applicant comes in and says, we want to make some changes to this plan. If they're minor, then the plan just goes in the file and it's fine. If we decide that we think that the plan is significantly different than what was filed, then we do need to have that referenced, and it does need to go to the Registry of Deeds so that the owner 40 years from now knows exactly what they're referencing, and they're not coming and trying to crawl around in our office files, which they're there, but.
And we made the decision at the last meeting that it was in the.
I think you're gonna have to,
Yeah.
Okay, when is your next meeting?
we meet again on.
May 13th.
13th.
That's.
And are you wanting to start, are they wanting to start right away?
They can't start until the construction documents are done. So I just started those.
Okay, so,
And we still have to go to the planning board,
all right, so it's not delaying you.
but I guess,
It's just a pain in the neck.
what we got out of this is that you approve the.
I
plan.
would approve.
We just need to do an amendment.
Right, you
Can
filed the
set a
amendment.
notice?
I'm sorry?
You have to give the 2-week notice again?
Yes. So I believe that's the case.
We have
For amendment.
we have to advertise.
Can you do that right away, or do you have to wait for Brian's work?
I just have to get I mean, I know what the thing is. I can advertise it as an amended order, but it has to be published in the Eagle.
I would just ask.
We publish in the Eagle, and it has to be in the Eagle a week ahead of the,
Right.
not that anybody ever
We get
reads
that
it.
done as soon as possible, so that.
So the meeting is 3 weeks.
Yeah.
The meeting is 3 weeks.
Yes, Sally.
So do you have enough information to publish
Yes,
an advertisement?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry for the miscommunication.
All right.
I'll make sure.
Appreciate your time.
We want to make sure.
All right,
right?
have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
Berkshire Botanical Garden. Sorry, guys.
Oh, no, we're
Have we entertained you enough?
We're closing out your night with a very unorthodox request. You mind if we sit up at the table?
Can
No,
sit,
go
yeah.
right ahead.
Did you all get a copy of this?
I did send it out, yeah.
Okay.
And we need you
I did copies because, it's all about saving the trees and, I'm sorry they're not stapled, but as you can see, my stapler melts on me. Anyone else would like a copy?
Need you to announce who you are for the record.
We will, of course. You got one or do you want? Might as well.
Jamie, you killed the tree.
I'm not gonna save a tree.
You want one just because you're.
I need to save a tree.
What better?
I printed out the whole bloody thing.
Time we get this form.
Well, this is
Oh
this
my
is not the CR.
God.
This
Oh,
is what we're proposing. So, my name is Rich Bradley. I'm the president of the Land Trust.
I'm Mike Beck with Berkshire Botanical Garden. This is about the property that's on the southeast corner of the Four Corners at 183 and 102. Berkshire Botanical acquired the property about 13 years ago. It's subject to a conservation restriction. I wasn't involved at the time. This predates my time with the garden, but it was basically, my understanding is that one of the reasons for this conservation restriction was to protect the view shed into town. It was one of the more open access points into town. And that was one of the reasons why this CR was entered into. What it gave the garden the right to do is to use it basically for some overflow parking. We have 25 days a year of parking that we can use that field for. We still call it Del Molino field. Although my 20-year-old kids that work for me now, that they don't know who the Del Molinos are. So we've been using it pursuant to the CR for many years. The reason we approached Rich and the Land Trust about a year ago now was that we've run into a situation where we're running out of regular parking at the Botanical Garden. It's a good problem to have, especially after COVID. We have a lot of visitors coming through, so we routinely fill up our main parking lot. And so we were exploring some ways to build in some flexibility into this arrangement. So we would have the ability to use it a little more intensively for parking. And one thing that we noticed during COVID, specifically when we didn't have any events happening, we stopped mowing that field. And we noticed that a lot of really interesting native grasses and sedges were coming up that we would previously just knock down constantly. And so we've been talking with a meadow consultant, Larry Weiner, who's worked with us on a 2.5 acre wildflower meadow on the other end of the property. He took a look at this field and he said, if you did some selective mowing and stopped mowing the cool season, or after the cool season grasses are done doing their thing, and you encourage the warm season grasses to come up, you could really create some potential really nice plantings there without a lot of intervention. So our idea coming to the Land Trust was, can we find a way to maybe limit the footprint of the parking that we actually carve out and let the areas around that delineated parking area grow in seasonally appropriately so that we encourage those plants to come in.
So you'd have a parking lot in the middle?
Yeah, so we would have a rectangle that we basically calculated would accommodate about 100 vehicles, 3 rows. And that we would let the other areas grow in over the course of the summer. We did have a site visit with the folks from the Land Trust just the other day where we had proposed having this rectangle right smack in the middle. The Land Trust folks were saying, well, what if you moved a little further south and it would be actually further away from the dip in the land there. And it would sort of even be a little more protected in terms of the visuals as you drive by or walk by. So we came up with this solution and have drafted a temporary agreement. And I want to emphasize it's temporary because we are in the midst of doing some pretty significant master planning at the Botanical Garden. And we have other property that's on the other side of Route 102 where currently Paul and Mead resides. That BBG acquired. And that is ultimately, as part of our master plan, we hope to have more permanent parking at that area. That property doesn't have any restrictions on it. It's not in a wetland area. It doesn't have a CR. So that would be our ultimate plan, but that's probably, 8 to 10 years down the road. So what this agreement would allow us to do is have a temporary arrangement where we would have a little bit more flexibility, lessen the footprint overall in the field where we would allow parking, with the one exception being Harvest Festival. As you all know, Harvest Festival is sort of all boots on the ground and all hands on deck, and we need every square inch of parking that we can.
All spaces
have.
filled.
All spaces filled. So for that weekend only, this agreement would basically allow us to then mow, which we would have to do the whole field to keep down sort of larger brush-like things that would creep in. We would use it for that weekend for parking and then go back to the smaller footprint for the rest of the year. So that's basically
So you're willing to give up spaces
For more days.
for more days.
for one weekend.
Correct.
One weekend, yep.
Yes, and so currently what we do is if we have one of the 25 days, we string things up, we use as much as we need for that event, but it could be the whole perimeter of the field. And in truth, in fact, we don't need that. We have a lot of need for sort of small overflow situations where we would like to have 20 or 30 cars to be able to make use of that. We're not looking at a situation other than Harvest Festival where we have 400 cars that need to get parked.
The state mow the edges of that when they do the 102, do they?
I believe they do a little bit, but our guys are in there and we just knock it down, or we have been knocking it down throughout the season, other than the COVID year when we didn't do it.
So can I, if I may, I on this just a little bit. So to give you a timeline of how all this unfolded, is Mike came to us a year ago to present this idea. I invited him to come to our meeting. There are a few people still on the Land Trust who were around when this whole conservation restriction became reality. We also have a number of people who are very fervent, conservative-minded people who don't, and I totally agree that a conservation restriction is relatively immutable and in perpetuity and really can't be changed. But Mike presented a situation that potentially afforded a reasonable compromise that has a number of what I would call strings attached to it. So long story short is that, when Mike presented the situation that, he wanted more days, but he wanted less parking. That was something that was attractive to us. At the present time, there's 25 days and then there's the monitoring of when the string and the stakes go up and down and all that stuff. This increases it from 25 to 40 days, but it limits the number of parking to 100 cars total. It does place it in a position away from the road. It allows for the native grasses and wildflowers to come in. So from the perspective of the land trust, there's a compromise is that we're giving them more days, but we're gaining less cars there. And we're also gaining more sort of maintenance of the property as it should be as a field for the most part. We also just indicated that knowing that this is a short-term plan, everyone unanimously agreed that if we were to do this, we would want to limit it to a 2-year cycle, which would require us to review it every 2 years and ensure that what they're asking to do and what we're granting them to do is still happening. In the event that there's any violations, we or you can simply say, that's it, no more. We go back to the CR and that's it. We made it very clear that we're not doing this unilaterally. This is a CR in which the Land Trust and the Conservation Commission co-hold the CR. So we aren't going to do this without your permission. And I just, the thing is that we kind of looked at it from the perspective that, we do it for 2 years, see how it goes. If it works, we consider renewing it for 2 years. But we're not letting this go in perpetuity. It has a finite lifespan. It is only limited to this field. It has no other impact to any other part of the CR. And so we just felt the interesting thing is that the people who were in opposition to this over the course of the year, we made sure that they were actively participating. They did the site visit and they were satisfied that what the solution that was put in place would be reasonable, knowing that this is an unorthodox request. So I'll leave it at that.
And if
I
I
would
could,
want to see it. I do not want to make any decisions. I would want to see it.
site
What would
visit.
you like to see? Sure, we can definitely site visit it. I mean,
Speaking of seeing, what are the visuals going to be now for these 40 days instead of the 25? Are you going to see the wildflower height going to hide any of the parking, any of the cars?
I mean, we haven't seen it grow into that level yet. So I can't guarantee that.
2 feet?
Yeah, I do. I mean, that's what Larry and Weiner, when he came by, said, you're going to have a really healthy growth here. But again, just to be clear, we would continue to mow the whole thing until about early June because that knocks down the invasive cool season grasses. And then you stop mowing, according to Larry, and then that brings up the native warm season grasses.
and the only areas mowed would be the parking and the egress to the curb cut.
And by moving it sort of to the south, again, it moves it away from the entrance into town, Route 102 going into Stockbridge. You're sort of moving it out of the visual way, if you want to call it that. There is a little copse of growth in there, so it would that rectangle would sort of just land right at that point. We have some rights under the CR to address that, but that would not be a plan. That would not be the plan of.
And what about signage indicating, directing people when the lots that we all use now are filled?
Well, I don't believe the signage there is signage now to direct people into that. And I don't believe that would necessarily change
No, I mean, we're not, again, under the CR, we don't really have the right to put anything permanent in there anyway.
Right.
And so what we had discussed informally was to say, there would be a directional at the main parking lot saying overflow parking this way
Right.
and a sandwich board saying entrance here and exit there. So there's no accidents,
So
basically.
you're still gonna use the stakes and the strings and.
I don't think so. Just because it's 3 rows, it will be really self-evident. So we will.
I've seen people when they're left to their own devices, what they do with.
We brought that up too.
Yeah.
And our goal is, and obviously, if there's an event in early June before anything can grow, we'll have to address that in a way that may be consistent with the stakes and what have you, but
Or one attendant type.
Right, exactly.
Right.
I did that for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't fun.
Yeah.
But when the land trust came by, we did a stake, we didn't stake out, but we put in the corner delineating. So
Yeah, that would
you
be-
would get a visual if you came by.
And I recognize this is totally unorthodox. There's no precedent, so I don't even know what's legitimate, real, or whatever, with respect to what makes this like a binding thing. But I want to, and I'm not necessarily looking to make this a legal binding document, but just more of like, it's an MOU, memorandum of understanding that this is what we're going to do for a very finite period of time. I would just say that there were a couple people on our board that would said, well, why don't we just look the other way and let them park for more days? And I'm not a person who believes in that. And I believe that we need to be transparent and at least establish some criteria that at least creates an offset in terms of value. So we lose value on the number of days, but we gain value in limiting the cars and also in terms of the field itself.
And one other thing I just want to mention is, we are not a developer. We're in the business of protecting land and encouraging people to be mindful of their land. And I think we've been good citizens of Stockbridge over the duration that we've been on site. So
Just one thing.
Yeah. Okay.
So that parking lot serves those buildings, where you have workshops and so on, quite well.
yes.
So I could see this not going away if you're talking about developing other parking somewhere else. Minor point, but I think you're in the right direction. When you mow the grass, you cut the flowers out and pollinators go away, so that's what they're trying to.
And one thing I should point out is that we also put in the criteria is that once this is all over, theoretically, we return back to the CR, that BBG is committed to continuing to follow the practices that we established in this,
As available. Correct.
So you're going from 20, you want to go from 25 to 40.
Yes.
What's the plan beyond that? My concern with this is you come back and say, well, we really need 60 days, or we really need, I know you say no now,
No,
but that's, that's what
we thought about it pretty intensely. And we opened for visitors technically on May 1 and we're done by Harvest Festival mid-October. And the season has crept a little on either side because of, a warming climate. So we actually have, a pretty healthy visitation right now, but not to the point that we're exhausting our main parking. And to your point, it is a good lot to have there, but from a visitor flow perspective, it's actually not ideal in the sense that, you're sending people on their way. They have to sort of get across to our property. So our hope is to have permanent parking that is adjacent to our visitor entrance. And I think that's the long-term goal that we're working towards. So this really is an auxiliary.
They can't find out where to buy a ticket.
Exactly. And then they
Yeah.
just start wandering and that
Yeah.
doesn't help anyone.
And by the time you have the Harvest Festival, most of these plants are finished.
That's correct. So that's why, again, when we talked to Larry Weena, he said, that's the end of season mow that he would recommend anyway if you're establishing a wildflower.
Keep it knocked down.
Yeah.
And
Are you gonna do any plantings or seeding?
No, that's the interesting thing. So again, talking to Larry, he said, just let it be, just see what is in there because there's a seed bank in there that he saw, things were coming up. And I think that's a sort of an interesting outreach aspect to the community too, to say, hey, you may have a field that you're not doing anything with, just stop mowing after June and see what happens. You don't have to invest thousands of dollars in seeding or putting plugs in. So it's kind of a little, it's a nice educational aspect to it too, that I feel kind of
In
excited.
that regard, could you give us an update at the end?
Of course.
What do you think?
Absolutely,
That's
yeah.
like, no.
And I should just point out that typically the land trust monitors the CR after this, but there's been talk within the land trust that we would move our monitoring up prior to the mowing so that we could at least use that as an opportunity to ensure that this is still being enforced, as part of the monitoring. But we, trust me, there's enough people on our board that will go by there and monitor that. And I just want to reiterate that if Mike came to us and said, I need 60, I can guarantee you that at least with the people on the board now, that wouldn't pass muster, and it has to pass muster with you as well. So it's not, I think we made it clear that 40 is really kind of the top end, that in contrast to the offsets that they're offering. So
this is, how do we codify this?
We haven't, get to see.
you didn't codify, I mean.
No, I know,
it was like-
but I know we have to see it. We have to make
Yeah,
a
and we
decision.
have
We
to vote on
haven't,
it.
we haven't made the decision, but
Right.
One thing I was going to tell you, and I kind of alluded to it in my email, is that the land trust has moved to a whole system. So in terms of tracking what we do and the properties and monitoring and all that. So you have access to baseline CR, all that stuff. As you are a co-grantee on this particular property, we can give you access to the system so you can see that at any given time and make inquiries or whatever. So that doesn't answer your question, how did we codify this? Because technically, we're suggesting that we do not change the CR, but rather just identify this as a temporary amendment or agreement for changing.
well, you heard us go on and on with.
I know, we were talking about it just from the last one, and we're like,
Yeah.
we're dealing with sticklers here.
Too, I bet they can give some advice about and you have one solution, but the
But
conservation
I guess
council
I,
has a different solution.
There would be different solutions if you want to.
I want,
What are you looking at?
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything, I hear
I'm
you.
willing to,
See it and
and you could,
Yeah.
there is
have this discussion.
what they call no-mow grass that stays low, and you certainly could drive and park on it. And the only thing they do is maybe once or twice a year, they knock down the flower heads, but you could drive over those. It's only about this high at the end of it's sheep's fescue
Let
primarily.
me pipe up for a second.
Yeah, you got it.
At one time, all the parking lots at Tangwood were only brush hogged. Almost all of them. No mowing, no lawnmowers. It was, cut at whatever height well, then catalytic converters came around. And whatever you cut off when it was 8 inches high, there's now, at least for the first few parkings, because it all got beaten down eventually, was now at a height that a catalytic converter could touch. After the first couple of experiences with that, we decided we had to mow. Everything had to be mowed. And it was green and it was short enough, so we didn't have issues. Another parking lot, well, it became a parking lot. It's over by Ozawa Hall. It's now Lindy Center and all that is over there. We had a mower breakdown in the spring, right at the worst possible time. So that whole field over there didn't get mowed for 2 or 3 weeks. It came up with yellow, orange paintbrushes, buttercups. Every other thing was just a
Beautiful.
pink, clover, with just a blaze of color over there. This was even before we had fences up around the place over there. And we walked down there and there was a fawn right in the middle of it. You couldn't see it, could have walked right over it because it was now about this high. It got mowed down eventually when the mower came back in, but I don't think that would have been much higher than the 18 inches or so because of what was there. Now, 2 feet or more, which is possible, I suppose, would screen the visuals of your parking lot, because it's a little bit higher than the road down through there, if I recall. So more people are gonna see your cars, the people, the incoming traffic that's parked there than before. Now, some of the events only had 2 or 3 rows, and I think that's probably where your 100-car minimum or maximum was gonna,
Right.
come out very handy. But there's been a few times it gets a little busier than that, and now you're gonna have, and of course, it's on a weekend, so everybody's gonna see more cars. Hopefully you have a good attendance for these events. I think that maybe, I don't know, maybe some fertilizer or some sort of thing to push the growth along that edge.
I mean,
Close to a wetland.
we can investigate that, but I think my understanding is that you actually want to discourage fertility in that field.
Well, yeah, I'm just looking for the,
We just also have to look at the CR to ensure that.
yeah,
that is.
that was just a thought that,
Well, I think to be clear, we have right now the use of, I mean, we're allowed to mow whenever we want,
Right.
maintain it as a field. There's no part of the existing CR that prohibits us from doing any of that. So really what we're saying is let's just shrink down that footprint that we do that to.
I think if you hide it, won't even be an issue, really. You won't have to do anything if you get a little bit of height in that. And, all right, fertilizer's not a good idea, but.
No fertilizer.
Well, it tends to let the.
But an overseed of some high plant material. If it came up, it came up. If it didn't, I'm just trying to visually not see cars there 40 times when we would see them 25 times.
Right.
It's a good test case.
I mean, and it can be finite, it can be very finite. So, you find that this isn't
We
satisfactory.
give them 2 years, the first year, well, we got to do something a little bit better.
Right. And we can change that. I do agree that I think the biggest conundrum for me is how do you ratify this so that it represents an understanding and agreement that's not changing the CR, and that it creates some accountability is really what it boils down to.
And transparency.
And that's really why I'm doing this. I don't want to do this where we look the other way. I don't want to have a discretionary situation here. I'd rather do something where we're all in agreement that this creates a net positive for all parties. So
can we go see it?
Sure. Same Friday?
Jim Friday?
you're okay with that, Friday?
The second?
Second.
What?
I'm the keeper of the paperwork
Pen?
and
Oh.
4 o'clock?
I just. I would like to see something in writing that we can put in a file that says.
Between now and
Why don't we? Document is?
I mean, I did put a signatory thing, but I only put one, but I
Right.
could, so
Isn't that what
everybody
we
has to
did?
sign it.
I mean, I'm, I don't really have any.
Yeah,
I would like to see what Mac has to say about
I just want to make sure, yeah, I mean, if it were our preference, we wouldn't officially CR.
it.
I
Even
This
if,
is temporary amendment or what did we?
Changes.
Change of
temporary
use, a temporary change of use.
On the
yeah,
growth thing, it may grow itself just because you haven't mown it or packed it down with tires.
Mhm.
You know, if you let nature takes its course, ground's not gonna be so compacted and then it'll grow better. So it might be the first year of no use in those areas, the second year pushes the growth up 24 inches.
Right.
do you want to ask David if he has any experience with temporary?
Well, he's gonna be there on the.
It's
Same
not,
day,
it's
so-
not a DEP thing, it's a state thing. We are.
Correct.
And they are trying to accommodate the farmer's market.
We are bringing that in to,
So is the farmer's market that was here going to be there?
No, it's an addition.
it's addition. Yeah, I was wrong when we spoke. Yeah, it's
But it's more crafts and it's less actual farmers.
I think there were actually farmers who were interested. Yeah, we've been reaching out and getting some really good response. So,
Great.
They have another day.
that's Monday night, not Monday afternoon.
So,
4 o'clock on the second?
Yeah. I'd be interested in, as an accounting of what grows up, I think is interesting.
Well, we were going to do that anyway,
Yes.
and especially working with the Meadow experts. About it.
We have ironweed growing up in one of our pastures and it's like, wow, look at that.
so there is, I guess I'll call it some precedent. I don't know that I would call it really completely relevant precedents, but the Ackley property directly opposite the Berkshire Arts Center. When it was IS 183 and they did one of their galas, they requested to park in that field, which was not permitted use under the CR. And so there was something filed that basically, I think I want to call it was like a waiver or some sort of indemnification or something like that. I'd have to go back on it, but it is on our records.
Okay.
That may be, what could be an applicable precedent for this.
Because it hit the fan when they were talking about putting the parking for the Josh in Gold Meadows.
Oh, yeah, I know. I was one of the people that
That was bad.
he asked to speak to say no.
So, I mean, there are reasons why it might not. That's why I would like to see paperwork in a file somewhere where someone comes in and says, how come they're doing this? This is why.
Sure.
This is the piece of paper that you can look at when
Mhm.
when you want to know what our reasoning was. I mean, because not everybody's going to watch us on TV to find out what we were thinking.
Absolutely.
The Ackley is a meadow.
Yeah, it's a wet meadow.
Recollection was,
Pretty wet.
yeah, but you could say that, yeah, it was further back though from the road. Back against the tree line. And I think it actually flowed down towards where the road's closed, in that direction.
It does. So it goes from, if you're looking at it from Willard Hill, that back right area, it comes down
And angles across.
and angles across and actually creates a bit of a pool there before it then flows out.
Yeah,
It's got a little
it's a
pond.
depression.
Yeah, depression, yeah. And that we typically monitor that for a couple of reasons after the fall, because we can actually get up there and walk the property and get past some of the wetness. But one of the challenges that we've run into is that buckthorn is like right there on that line with the wood line, and it makes it really hard to get into the back half of that CR. So,
Okay, yeah.
but there is that water line that goes,
The front part.
Right.
is dry enough to serve.
yeah, and I think that's where they use the parking at that point, yes. So.
All right.
So we'll do the walkthrough. And how do you want to explore? Do you want me to explore that document and see if that's a
Yeah.
reasonable document?
Yeah,
Do you want
just
to run
just
that by
have
your-
some ideas of, how to make it transparent, that's all.
Okay.
And that we didn't just say, oh, yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah, no, I mean, my goal was that whatever we come up
It's in
with.
perpetuity, and that's what we agreed
Right.
to.
No, I hear you. So.
Sorry, do we have to sign something?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On another note, just to give you telegraph to maybe put us on the agenda for your next meeting,
Yes.
we probably will have a CR for.
Loveless property?
Amazing. For you to peruse. Hopefully.
Great. Yeah, great.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Mohawk Lake?
No, it's Loveless, right behind, that's right as you turn on to Westdale from 102 past the farmhouse, there's a property that goes up to the town lands. And it's owned by Laurel Hill.
Seems to be in minutes.
But it's CPC Laurel Hill Land Trust. So we're holding the CR and Laurel Hill owns the land. We have, and you all are also co-grantees, I think, on that property.
Yes.
To get you guys to approve it too. So,
Because it was CPA money.
correct. But I'm really optimistic. That is actually, just so you know, when I was alluding to the new CR templates, that's the new CR template that required us to do a significant rewrite on that restriction. So
Just to be up.
And off, I remembered that.
so, thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, can we help you with something? Are you?
No, actually, I've dialed in the past two meetings. My name's Tony Thomas. I'm from the Lead Conservation Commission.
Oh, all right, yeah.
So I know, I think it's Sally, usually question when I hear on the screen. I don't have a lot of time to learn things, and I have been dipping into other towns just to see how they manage their certain predicaments sometimes.
And what's your last name, Tony? Thomas, okay.
We have a lot of predicaments in this.
But yeah, no, that's very interesting because you have a lot of different physical, things to consider. So it's just helpful to see how you deal with your citizens and your engineering people, because I sense a big difference in how they deal with you.
In what-
When they come to our meetings.
You say in what way? You say in what way?
Are we still official and recorded?
Yep.
We got it, we got
Have
it.
to adjourn.
We have to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.